The lack of vision within the ALP is symptomatic of the broader problems within the ALP, which I think also apply equally to all political parties as they continue to shrink into smaller and smaller numbers and don't want to talk about anything but polls and personalities rather than issues and visions for the future. And I'm passionately committed to making Queensland a better place, and that's why I work for the trade union movement. But I now believe that the best thing I can do for Queenslanders and for my members is to establish something outside of the existing political framework because of the rotten nature of the ALP internally and also the failure of other political parties to provide a real opportunity for people to have a say. So what we're looking at doing is setting up a process whereby we can influence politicians rather than creating a new political party which will be focusing on becoming politicians.
So basically you're saying that Labor has lost touch with its bread and butter supporters, the union movement.
Well, I think it's lost its way, it's lost its vision. I mean, my union represents over 40,000 members in Queensland, and that's more members than all the political parties in Queensland combined. Clearly, if you look at some of the successive groups like the Get Up campaign or the Say Yes to Climate Action campaign, there is a deep desire from the community broadly to have a say about the issues that matter. What we're now finding is that politicians and their political parties are no longer relevant to Queenslanders and to the broader community in Australia. So we need to find new ways to give the community a real voice, give people the opportunity to be involved in politics without trying to get into Parliament. I think the problem at the moment with the ALP, it's dominated, a smaller and smaller number of party members are dominated by members of Parliament, their staff and wannabe candidates, and we actually need to go back to the days when debate and dissent was valued because it meant that we were fighting about ideas that we could then take to the broader community rather than trying to run our policies based on election announcements and what focus groups tell us people want to hear rather than working out what we should be saying and leading the community rather than dropping to the lowest common denominator in a cheap political stunt process.
It's a pretty stinging resignation letter, and it also comes on the timing of the State Labor Conference. Was that a decision that you took to announce it this weekend? Did you make that decision after appearing at the conference and hearing Julia Gillard speak yesterday?
No, I made the decision late last week. Clearly the Queensland government has lost its way. I mean, I had a lot of time for the Goss government. They weren't great for the public sector, but they changed Queensland. Peter Beattie and his government went through a series of crises, but those crises allowed them to radically change the nature of our schooling system, to improve our schools, our hospitals and our child safety system. And I think the current government is going to be remembered for privatising our assets. And last week it was leaked that they're now looking at privatising our services. We can't support any government that looks at outsourcing in schools, hospitals and prisons. The community demands quality services. We need a political voice which will allow them to have a real say over politics. And my decision to resign was based on the continued attempt by this government to outsource things and a response to their state budget, where clearly a large black hole is being developed, which will now be found by either the government or the opposition when they come in after the next state election for a series of changes to government policy that they won't tell the community about during the next election campaign. We want to actually force the politicians to be accountable. We want to force them to talk to the community, but we also want to provide a framework where interest groups and community groups and the broader community can get involved in campaigns and make sure that they can determine what are the issues, how are they dealt with, and move forward and get them to force the politicians to respond to our issues in a community sense rather than us having to watch the farce of political debate around who's going to be the leader and what the latest focus groups say. The issues are far more important facing Australia. The climate change is the greatest moral challenge of our time. I think we need to address that. We need to address the nature of the public sector, particularly at a time of shrinking state income both in Queensland and across the country. These are very big issues that need to be dealt with. These are issues that people care about. People don't care what the last opinion polls say. If you ask them who they prefer as leader, they'll say one or the other, but in reality they have a significant disdain for all politicians. There are some very good people in politics who I admire, like Bob Katter and Malcolm Turnbull, who stand up for their principles, but by and large politicians will check with a focus group to find out what they should say and then tell us what they think we want to hear.
Okay, Queensland State Public Sector Union Secretary Alex Scott, thank you.
Thank you.